Welcome to the Qasim Rashid Show, a civil rights lawyer here to expose all forms of injustice with a sprinkling of dad jokes in between. Here's your host, Qasim Rashid.
Good morning and peace be upon you this beautiful Sunday, wherever you are tuning in from. My name is Qasim Rashid, and this is the Qasim Rashid Show here on Sirius XM Urban View Channel 126, the most awesome show in the multiverse. As always, I want to thank you all for tuning in, for your emails, your notes, your texts, your tweets. I'm grateful you all listen to the show. Grateful you keep sharing it with family and friends, and grateful for your feedback as always. So please keep those messages coming, and let's keep the conversation going. We've got a great show lined up for today. Pastor Munther Isaac is here, and I got to tell you, you are in for a critical, important show, a wonderful episode. He is a Palestinian Christian pastor in Occupied Palestine, here to talk about his experiences in Occupied Palestine, why he defines life in military occupation as apartheid, and why he is adamant and clear that this is, in fact, a genocide, and also what role we can be playing to end this genocide. He'll be on in just a few minutes. I want to start by talking, the second thing I'll be talking about after we bring him on is what's going on in Louisiana, because what's happening in Louisiana is a microcosm of where right-wing evangelicals want this country to go, a place where there's poverty wages, starved children, and people in perpetual prison. And I'll explain that in just a minute. Before we bring on Pastor Munther Isaac, I want to share the remarks that I delivered before my city council about a week and a half ago. And these comments really define, in my view, the moment that we're in terms of either you are supportive of these war crimes or you want to end these war crimes. There's really no middle ground in this space. You can't kind of support war crimes. You can't kind of end them. You either completely end them or you enable them to continue. So I'm going to pause for a minute. I'm going to play this clip and then we'll come back. Good evening. My name is Qasim Rashid. I'm a human rights lawyer residing here in Naperville with my wife Aisha and our 3 children. And I'm here to ask the Naperville City Council once again to uphold justice and divest from this horrific siege in Gaza that has to date killed more than 37,000 Palestinian civilians. As we observe Juneteenth this month, we have much to reflect on, including this long history of solidarity between Black and African, Palestinian, and Arab liberation. This is an especially important month for us non-Black and non-Arab communities. The City Council has received this request to divest numerous times from its Muslim residents, its Jewish residents, its residents of the Christian faith, those who are Hindu, who are Sikh, who are Buddhist, residents of all faiths and backgrounds, and indeed across the racial spectrum. But the City Council has yet to act. Is it because the City Council doesn't have the authority? No. Indeed, as a sovereign elected authority over this city, you absolutely have the authority to act. Is it because there's no precedent of city councils divesting from foreign governments? No. Indeed, more than 90 major American cities divested from apartheid South Africa, helping enable federal divestment as well. Already, several American cities have divested from Israel, as have several American universities. Is it because acknowledging that our funds, our dollars are being used to commit war crimes, that's a fringe position? On the contrary, it's the undisputed global consensus. Back in February, the ICJ ruled that Israel must, quote, ensure with immediate effect that its military does not commit genocide, end quote. Since then, the Netanyahu regime has killed an additional 14,000 Palestinians. In May, the chief prosecutor of the International Criminal Court, Karim Khan, applied for arrest warrants for Netanyahu and Defense Minister Gallant, saying, quote, the criminal acts of intentionally causing death, starvation, great suffering, and serious injury to body or health of the civilian population, end quote. Again in May, the U.S. State Department, in its own report, acknowledged that Israel is violating international human rights law by killing civilians. And just this month, the United Nations conducted their own independent investigation and concluded, quote, that Israel has committed crimes against humanity of extermination, gender persecuting, targeting Palestinian men and boys,
murder, forcible transfer, torture, and inhuman and cruel treatment. And the city council has yet to act. Nelson Mandela said back in 1997, but we know all too well that our freedom is incomplete without the freedom of Palestinians. These Palestinian and Israeli campaigners for peace know that security for any nation is not abstract, neither is it exclusive. We must make our voices heard. This Juneteenth, I ask the Naperville City Council to make your voice heard and stand on the right side of history. Thank you.
Now, unfortunately, my city council has not yet voted to end this divestment or end their investment in these war crimes, and that's kind of the problem. But I want you to take this as a template to speak at your city council, raise your voice, make sure people hear you, because again, this is not an opinion. We'll talk about this with the pastor in just a moment. It's not an opinion what's happening. I mean, just last week, the UN Human Rights Council, which began its 56th session in Geneva, issued a report that is describing Israel's assault on Gaza as extermination. They use the word extermination. The United Nations is calling this an extermination, and it is imperative that we meet the urgency of the moment. And to come and talk a bit more about that, after break, I'm going to bring on Pastor Munther Isaac. I'll give his full bio then. Extraordinarily thoughtful lecturer, scholar, academic, but most importantly to this conversation, someone who has lived in occupied Palestine his whole life. He is a Palestinian Christian in Bethlehem, literally the oldest Christian community in the world. And it is imperative, I believe, that we listen to what people on the ground are telling us if we want a meaningful solution to this problem. You're listening to the Qasim Rashid Show here on Sirius XM Urban View Channel 126, the most awesome show in the multiverse. We'll be right back after this break. Welcome back. You're listening to the Qasim Rashid Show here on Sirius XM Urban View Channel 126, the most awesome show in the multiverse. I'm extraordinarily fortunate and excited for our guest this week. Pastor Munther Isaac has been a force for justice and humanity. If you've paid any attention to the atrocities being committed in Palestine right now, you have seen the good pastor's voice not only on social media, but across the media spectrum. He is a Palestinian Christian pastor and theologian. He now pastors the Evangelical Lutheran Christmas Church in Bethlehem and the Lutheran Church in Beit Sahour. He's also the academic dean of the Bethlehem Bible College, and he's the director of the highly acclaimed and influential Christ at the Checkpoint conferences. He has really taken the opportunity, and I use that word very lightly, to speak up for justice in ways few other people have, especially since this horrific siege in Gaza has escalated. And his bio continues, and we'll come back to that. I think the most important part about his bio is that he's married to his wonderful wife, Dinah, 15 years now. And they have two amazing boys, Karam and Zaid. Pastor, thank you for being with us today.
Thank you for having me, Qasim. Thank you.
It's a privilege, and we were speaking off air that I've had the good fortune of visiting occupied Palestine personally, and seeing the beauty of the country, seeing the struggles as well. I'd love for our listeners to hear from you, Pastor. What is daily life like? What are the challenges faced by Palestinians under military occupation? How does it impact your community's access to these basic human rights of education, healthcare, freedom of movement? And when I say your community, I mean both the broader Palestinian community and specifically Palestinian Christians as well.
Yeah, if I want to choose a few words that can describe our daily experience, those would be checkpoints, restriction of movements, and maybe limited opportunities. It's hard to put in words just how much control Israel have of our lives. They basically control every aspect of our lives. I'm here in Bethlehem in the West Bank, And Israel has managed over the years to divide the West Bank and isolate the Palestinian community into isolated blocks. Each block is controlled by multiple checkpoints. With the attention right now, rightly so, on Gaza, with the genocide taking place, Israel is building more and more settlements inside the West Bank and restricting the movements from one block to the other in the West Bank. For example, if I want to go from Bethlehem to Ramallah, I have to go through multiple Israeli checkpoints. That is if these checkpoints are open to begin with. And the siege on Gaza, which lasted for 16 years before the war, now 17 years. Right now, all it takes Israel is to close 2 checkpoints outside of Bethlehem, and Bethlehem becomes another Gaza, another completely isolated block.
Wow.
The same applies to Hebron, to Nablus. This is what Israel has managed to do. So we are suffocated within these blocks. Some have converted them to the reservation camps. And the idea is to limit our natural growth as a community and to push us out. This is basically the idea. To the extent that for the first time in history, Bethlehem and Jerusalem are separated from one another. Even for me as a clergy from Bethlehem, I'm not allowed to go to Jerusalem. And for any Palestinian to go to the Israeli side, including East Jerusalem, East Jerusalem is occupied, of course. In 1967, we will need a permit from the Israeli military. So when we say we live under military occupation, I don't think people get that. They assume there is a conflict. There is a Palestinian state that is fighting another state and that we are neighbors. Whereas in fact, we are completely dominated by an occupation that literally controls every aspect of our lives, including, for example, the family registration system. They control the data. They control who lives where. They control the borders. If a Palestinian marries someone from East Jerusalem, it's complicated. If a Palestinian marries someone from outside of Palestine, that means most likely they will have to relocate outside of Palestine because Israel wouldn't grant that person the visa. So this is how much control they have of our lives. Then there is the daily incursions on any Palestinian that Israel deems a threat, and you have to understand it's not as if there is trial and there is a legal system. No, it's the military court and daily arrest, even daily incursions with young Palestinians being killed. I look at and I listen to the Western media, and there is so much focus on the hostages of October 7th. And I hope people don't get me wrong. I want all hostages to be released. No one's happy with people being imprisoned or taken as hostages, especially children. But do you know that since October 7th, there is close to 6,000 Palestinians who've been kidnapped? And with Israel conveniently labeling them as terrorists, and they say we arrested them. But in reality, they are kidnapped from their homes with no trial, with no opportunity to see a lawyer. Many cases, without charges and just administrative detention. So you think of the thousands of Palestinians who've been either killed or arrested. You begin to understand that every Palestinian is touched by this brutal reality of the occupation.
Beit Sahour is an Israeli human rights watch organization that documents this really horrific situation of thousands of Palestinians flat out kidnapped by the Israeli military. And they go on to document that includes up to 1,000 children. And numerous human rights organizations have pointed out that not only are these 1,000 children taken from their parents, but 80% of them are physically abused, suffering gunshot wounds, broken bones, denied food. And that doesn't even include the psychological torture of being away from parents indefinitely. And then up to 40% of them are sexually abused while in prison as well. And I think that the framing that I want our listeners to think about is, what would you do in that situation when a foreign military takes your children, denies you access to see them? And I think the answer is you would do everything you possibly could to get your children back. And I'm so glad you very thoroughly and beautifully pointed out that, yes, we want every hostage held by Hamas to be returned immediately, safe and sound. And that needs to be a bilateral exchange as well. If you only care about one side of hostages, it's not actually hostages you care about. It's this element of international human rights law that we need to uphold. Pastor, you belong to a Christian community that is undoubtedly the oldest Christian community in the world, literally, right? The oldest Christian community in the world. And you made a really painful comment to consider that for the first time in history, there's a barrier between Jerusalem and Bethlehem. As a Palestinian Christian, as a leader in the Christian community, as a leader in the Palestinian community, what message did you convey in your recent trip to the United States to your fellow Christian colleagues about this injustice and atrocity that's taking place right now?
Yes, so the message is about the reality under occupation, the reality under Israeli, what we, many are describing now, including Beit Sahour, as the reality under apartheid. And we reach out to Christians who, in many cases, will not pay close attention to the situation in Palestine unless it affects Christians. So we take that as our entry point to say that if you truly are truly concerned about the situation of, as you described, the oldest Christian community in the world, you need to have a better understanding of the situation. And most importantly, we try to challenge this notion that what we have in Palestine is a religious conflict. It's not a religious conflict. And we as Palestinian Christians are suffering from Israeli policies of discrimination, occupation, and, as I said, apartheid. So we try to say, try and walk in our shoes. Try and understand the difficulty of our reality on the ground. And second, we challenge and call them out for their years of support to Israel. It's not a secret that many Christians have a strong affinity to Israel, to the Jewish people, for various theological reasons, which led to political support, in many cases, unconditional political support to Israel, even on the expense of not just Palestinians, the native people of the land, but even Palestinian Christians. So we try to raise awareness that your theology is actually harming us. Your advocacy, because right now, when we talk about, for example, Christian Zionism, it's not a theology, it's a political movement. Your lobbying, your work on the ground actually harms our existence and puts our existence in danger, and actually puts the whole region in danger in some instances for the lack of concern for peace and justice. I think the biggest problem we face in many circles in the West is the framing of the conflict as that between two religions or two traditions, the Judeo-Christian tradition versus Arabs and Muslims. And in that, it's as if they can do anything to eliminate terrorism, to eliminate radicalism, while not being aware that they are involved in many cases in the very same ideology they claim they are resisting.
If you're just tuning in, we're speaking with a renowned pastor, Pastor Munther Isaac, the Palestinian Christian scholar, author of numerous books, including The Other Side of the Wall, From Lands to Lands, From Eden to the Renewed Earth, and an introduction to Palestinian theology. We're discussing his life as a Palestinian, as a Christian in occupied Palestine under Israeli military rule. And Pastor, you used some strong words that some people may not understand why you're so deliberately using words like apartheid and genocide. And I've seen some of your past interviews, and I'd love for you to kind of restate this answer you've given in the past about how these are not opinion words you're using. You're looking at the facts on the ground. Can you talk a bit more about why you're calling this a genocide and why you call living under military rule apartheid?
Oh, yes, of course. Because if we don't call things by their name, we cannot address the reality, and we cannot be, in our Christian tradition, we say, blessed are the peacemakers. You can't be a peacemaker if you don't have the right understanding of the reality on the ground. And when people ask me, why do you describe it as a genocide? I say, are you listening to what the Israelis themselves are telling you they are about to do, and they are doing? Are you watching what is happening? The numbers themselves speak for themselves. How is the destruction of 70 to 80% of the infrastructure in Gaza a self-defense? How is the killing of 15,000 children anything but a vengeance campaign or a genocide? And terms like genocide and apartheid have definitions agreed upon by the international community. Because at the end of the day, if we cannot agree on some sort of laws and boundaries that control and regulate our relationships as humans, then the result is chaos. Something like apartheid has an internationally agreed upon definition, and it's recognized as a war crime. And when you have one organization after the other, whether Palestinian or Israeli, and Palestinians have said it for years, of course, no one listens. Then you have the Israeli organization Beit Sahour describe it as a system of Jewish supremacy from the river to the sea. And I find it ironic that, years ago, I think 2 or 3 years ago, they used the language from the river to the sea because it's a term that is, at the center of a lot of debate right now in the United States. I wish people who are concerned about such language understand what is happening in reality from the river to the sea. B'Tselem itself described it as a Jewish system of Jewish supremacy, apartheid from the river to the sea. Human Rights Watch, Amnesty International, and numerous UN reports. So this is not a matter of opinion. It's not what you think. It's not something that we can discuss. There is a definition and there are facts on the grounds, and we have to ask, do the facts speak or match what's happening? And we have multiple witnesses say so. The question then, do we need the international law or should we get rid of it? And why is it that everyone celebrates, rewards these human rights organizations with the exception of when they talk about Palestine? And why is it that Europeans in particular, and in many cases Americans, lecture us in the Middle East about human rights and the international law and why we're not respecting it? But when we are the victims of it from Israel, they ignore it. They turn a blind eye, even to the extent of telling us, yes, we recognize what's happening, but this language is not helpful. So now they want to dictate to us as occupied, as colonized, which language to use. I think with the term genocide, the South Africans have made a very convincing case. I mean,
Yes.
And the results were overwhelming. It wasn't like there was a dispute. I don't know what, even as I said in one of my sermons, I don't know what people are debating. You have Israelis killing Palestinians indiscriminately, talking about emptying Gaza from its inhabitants, using the language of ethnic cleansing, using the language of recolonizing Gaza, destroying universities, hospitals, schools, clinics, and you wonder, what more evidence do you need? How many more Palestinians need to die before the international community says enough is enough? And maybe one final thing, we use this language because we want things to stop. We want the killing to stop. And as long as we do not recognize and be very straight and forceful with and direct with what's happening, then we will allow it to continue. And this is the tragedy of this particular genocide, in that, in other genocides, maybe more people were killed. And there are currently other conflicts happening around the world. But this is probably the only one in which it's happening and it's unfolding in front of our eyes to see. And it's the only one in which those who are committing it are telling us what they're doing and broadcasting it live to the world with total disregard to Palestinian lives. They're mocking the killing of children. They're mocking the destruction of universities, of homes. They're going into homes. I mean, it's really hard to explain and hard to fathom that the world is silent about such atrocities.
If you're just tuning in, we're speaking with Pastor Munther Isaac, a Christian pastor in Occupied Palestine. I love that you originally studied civil engineering in Palestine and then obtained a master's in biblical studies from Westminster Theological Seminary, and then your doctorate from the Oxford Center for Mission Studies. Certainly somebody well versed in this space. And one of the common regards that we hear all the time is that, well, whatever's happening is happening because of October 7th. And I think this is a very cruel and unfortunate argument to be made. But how do we better communicate that two things can be true, that we don't accept the killing of civilians on October 7th, that's indefensible, and October 7th was not the start of this conflict? Why is there this historical amnesia of everything of the 75 years before October 7th, as if the whole world began on that date?
I think it's because there is total control of the narrative right now, and this is part of the struggle. Who controls the narrative? And it's been really hard for us to see how the context of October 7th is ignored, or just to explain that by pointing to the context, we're not justifying or defending what happened on October 7th, and certainly not condoning the killing of civilians or kidnapping of children and killing of children. But here is what I would say. I mean, if you are truly appalled by what happened on October 7th, yet we're silent for the last 76 years, I can't accept that, with all due respect. In where were you for the last 76 years? The year, by the way, 2023 was one of the bloodiest years in terms of Palestinians killed in many, many years. Where were you? Yeah. So do we have to be killed in one day for you to... And then, you know, masses of Palestinians are killed every day and no one's protesting. So this is what's really annoying me, is that all of a sudden you isolate October 7th. You not just ignore, but dismiss 76 years of oppression. You dismiss the killing of many Palestinians in 2023. And actually, you also dismiss very important facts that I don't hear are reported in this in the reporting of this war. For example, one of them is that 70% of the people of Gaza are descendants of 1948 refugees. 70%. I mean, can you imagine the trauma these people are facing? Then the 16 years of siege before October 7th. Another element that is also often completely dismissed is the freedom marches, which took place a few years ago, in which the people of Gaza tried to break their siege non-violently and creatively, and were killed even then.
That's right.
So, I mean, what do you want Palestinians to do, really? You mentioned something in one of your comments about trying to walk in our shoes. In one of the conversations I had with a Western journalist, I said, I want your audience to try to walk in our shoes, not for 16 years under this siege that calculated the amounts of calories. I mean, how dehumanizing. But try to walk 16 months or 16 weeks in our shoes. And I want to see how you will respond. And when Palestinians tried to respond, as I said, non-violently in the freedom marches, they were killed. When we advocate for boycotting Israel internationally, we're condemned. I mean, what do you want us to do, honestly? So the silence of the world and the dismissal of our plights before October 7th is actually so loud. And that's why I can't accept when people challenge us for, but it's about October 7th. You know, are Palestinians' lives less worthy than other lives? But then similarly, Qasim, and I think this is an important point. If you argue that what Israel has done in the last almost 260 days now, what is it, 9 months or so, is an appropriate response to October 7th, there's something wrong in you. I'm sorry. There's something seriously and foundationally wrong in you. If you think because of what happened in October 7th, it's okay and justifiable to kill 15,000 children, honestly, I can't help you. I can't do anything to. There's something wrong with your humanity. You know, what happened to us that we keep repeating this idea of October 7th as the reason, or even the whole idea of Hamas taking Palestinians as human shields. You know, I keep hearing it repeated in the Western media, blaming Hamas, hiding behind civilians. If a serial killer in the United States, say in Wyoming or wherever, hides from the police and goes to a school and kidnaps 100 child, would you advocate destroying and killing everyone so that we get rid of that serial killer? Really? Is
That's
this
the argument, yeah.
You might do so if they were not children but animals, and maybe then human animal rights groups will protest. I mean, I hope people listen to themselves.
Yeah.
The systematic dehumanization of Palestinians is appalling to me. And as a person of faith, as a leader of faith, I can't be silent. I really can't be silent when it's not just the killing, but the dehumanization and justifying of this killing that is happening. This is why we've been speaking out so loud.
Pastor, I want to really double down on this point you made of what do people want Palestinians to do? Because the Great March of Return that you mentioned a moment ago, the UN data is that it resulted in Israeli military killing more than 214 Palestinians, including 46 children. More than 36,000 people, Palestinians, were injured, including nearly 9,000 children. And this was a completely nonviolent, peaceful march. There wasn't a single emphasis. There was no Hamas involvement, if that's your boogeyman. And of course, prior to this, the boycott, divest, and sanction movement, BDS, is a completely nonviolent boycott movement. It's similar to the Montgomery bus boycott that Dr. Martin Luther King led. And this has been criminalized in 40 states in the United States, several nations. I think Germany just labeled it a terrorist organization for a peaceful economic divestment. And so the point is that peaceful economic divestment is criminalized. Peaceful march, you're murdered. And now the US government has tried to pass legislation that even being critical of the government of Israel is anti-Semitism. And so I think that's the question, that after 76 years of nothing happening, and even now speaking and marching being criminalized, what are Palestinians supposed to do? And I think you answered that question, that this is why the words of genocide and apartheid are correct, because that is the objective reality on the ground. One of the things that I want to leave our listeners with in these last about 5 to 10 minutes that we have is, what are the key steps that need to be taken by both Israeli and Palestinian leaders to move forward to a sustainable peace? And what role can the ordinary person listening to this do to help effectuate and advance that peace?
So let me begin by the second part of the story, because I think we have to define the BDS movement correctly. And the BDS movement, in my opinion, has to do first and foremost with our ethical choices. And it has to do with the individual's right to choose ethically which products, for example, he uses and which products he doesn't want to use.
That's right.
I can't understand how a country that boasts about freedom and democracy wants to criminalize that. I mean,
Yes.
this is the utmost hypocrisy. But I think this is where the answer lies even to our plight in Palestine, because what's happening in Palestine is much, much deeper and goes beyond Palestine. It has to do with a whole colonial system that still exists in our world today. I can't help but think of President Biden's words. If Israel did not exist, we would have created it, invented it. Yeah. And he calls himself a Zionist for that reason, because Israel is good for the United States, for the global economy that depends on weapon trades, control of natural resources, the of course, exploitation of the poor, and so on. So this is what we're resisting. We're resisting coloniality, and not just a situation in Palestine. And I choose the word resist. Of course, keep in mind, I'm talking about creative nonviolent resistance,
Exactly.
resistance. And what happens in Palestine, I believe, is the key to other regions around the world. There's so much focus on the coming American elections. I think and I believe that actually September is far more important than what happens in November. September, the school year begins and universities resume. Will the students lead the conscious movement and say enough is enough and not in our name? I believe this is really important. Unless the international community, the grassroots movements mobilize and take serious efforts to speak and hold their leaders accountable, and especially implement the international law by holding war criminals accountable. And also, as I keep saying, isolating Israel. I don't think anything will change. Israel will not come to the table for discussion unless it is forced to. Right now, the problem we have is that Israeli leadership, which keeps shifting from the right to the extreme right, as you look at the political map in Israel. And I think one of the biggest reason is that they know that they will never be held accountable. They feel above the law. Not only do they know, and I've said this, believe me, from this very same office to a group of evangelical leaders back in October, I said, mark my words, this will happen. Israel will keep on with the killing for two reasons. They don't have to pay a single penny for it. You guys are paying for it. And second, they will not be held accountable. This is our problem. They have economical, financial support, and they have political support to the extent that, you have congressmen threatening the ICC.
Yeah.
I mean, it's unbelievable. It's really unbelievable. So I think these are critical moments. And I'm excited particularly to see many interfaith groups, Christians, Jews, and Muslims in synagogues and mosques and churches coming together and saying enough and no. I'm really excited about the students mobilizing from different backgrounds. I was just in the States. I heard from some of these students. I encourage them to continue because to me, this is the only hope we have. I travel to the United States occasionally and I have the opportunity to meet with congressmen and women or their staff. It's depressing, Qasim. It's really depressing. It's depressing, especially when I meet with government officials who keep repeating to me that they feel powerless. They know exactly what the problem is, especially, those who are involved in the daily details, but they feel somehow powerless. So I think we need to reclaim this true power that belongs to the people. And if we don't mobilize together as grassroots movements in the streets from different faiths, different traditions, and no faiths, and just say, this has to stop. What happens in Palestine, as I said, is about much, much more than Palestine. This is what I have some hope, to be honest.
Yes.
Especially in these days.
You dovetailed beautifully to the final question, Pastor, that I wanted to ask. And if you're just tuning in, I hope you go back and listen to the full show. We're speaking with Pastor Munther Isaac, leading Christian theologian and scholar in occupied Palestine, about his experiences as a Palestinian Christian and what needs to be done to stop this genocide, stop the apartheid, and move to a place of justice, which will not only mean peace and security for Palestine, but also for Israelis as well. This is a long-term sustainable peace for both communities to live side by side. And I think, we come from different faith traditions, but with a similar love of humanity, of God, of course, of Jesus Christ. What gives you hope, Pastor, in these really difficult and trying times? How do you maintain optimism? Because one of the most common notes I receive, especially from young people, you talked about how you hope young people are the future. They're able to resist in September, especially demonstrate through peaceful, nonviolent resistance their opposition to these war crimes. What gives you hope? Because that is the constant question, that everything looks terrible, everything looks horrible. We're on the precipice of nuclear war. Things are expanding. The war is expanding. How do you maintain positivity and a sense of faith and trust that things can or will get better?
Yeah, so to be honest and clear, I'm not optimistic and I'm not positive. I'm a realist, but at the same time, I'm a man of faith. My hope comes from knowing and trusting God and His goodness and the justice of God. And this is the ultimate source of my hope. This is what keeps me going. And to be honest, also, I think these days, especially talking to my community, I feel that rather than talking about hope, we need to talk about survival. How do we survive? How do we survive day after day? How do we just make it through the next day, the next week, the next month? How do we stay resilient in our land? there's a very important concept that's now really defining the Palestinian experience, which is that of resilience, sumud, the Palestinian sumud, resilience. And I think it's a character of being tested over the year, yet always persevering. At the end of the day, we are in our land. After all what happened to us, 76 years, we're still here. And ultimately, there has to be a way in which we share the land. Otherwise, we will continue in this cycle. And I refuse to give in to the idea that we're destined to fight. No, we're not destined to fight. Yet, hope comes from what we do. Hope is not about waiting. It's more about acting. So rather than talking about hope to my community, at least, I talk about let's survive and let's do whatever we can, even if it's a small act of kindness right now, of any small act that help us persist and resist in our land and stay and persevere. Let's engage in that. In my own personal capacity, I'm committed to advocating for Palestinians all over the world. I have a platform that God enabled me to use in really unexpected ways. And I'm grateful for that. And I will continue to use that. But other Palestinians are doing whatever they can. I think the true heroes in this that give us hope right now in Gaza are the doctors, the first responders, nurses, the journalists, the mothers who, this is what gives me hope, is the fact that Palestinians continue to survive, to resist, and to, fight for survival in whichever capacity we have. And as I said, I think I look around the world, yes, the political leadership seems, they're complicit in this, honestly. But the streets have spoken. The streets around the world have spoken. And I think the work of university students and many, many faith leaders around the world gives me hope that no, humanity is still conscious and awake, and let's build on that.
Beautifully said, and may God continue to build and strengthen your platform. Pastor, before you go, what is the best way for our listeners to support your work, to get in touch with you if they have questions, to help elevate and boost your platform?
Well, I continue to speak through the social media, whether it's on my Twitter and Instagram and YouTube channel or Facebook. Feel free to visit and share the messages I do. I'm involved in several, organizations that have work on the ground in Gaza, and that I can, occasionally share about on my social media. One of them is called the Shepherd Society, which is part of Bethlehem Bible College, and the others through the church, the Middle East Council of Churches. They have an important work with refugees in Gaza that's still active right now. And I think the best thing we can do right now is to continue to pray and to continue to encourage one another, send encouraging messages to Palestinians around the world, and to continue to believe that despite everything, peace is possible.
Amen. Amen. Pastor, so grateful to have you with us today. We're praying for your safety and your prosperity and your success, and we hope to have you back with us in the future.
Thank you.
That is Pastor Munther Isaac of Palestine, of Occupied Palestine. He pastors the Evangelical Lutheran Christmas Church in Bethlehem and the Lutheran Church in Beit Sahour. Grateful to have him on. You're listening to the Qasim Rashid Show here at Sirius XM Urban View. We'll be right back after this break. Welcome back. You're listening to the Qasim Rashid Show here on Sirius XM Urban View, channel 126, the most awesome show in the multiverse. That was Pastor Munther Isaac. I'm just enamored by him. He's brilliant. And you can hear the passion and fire, but just measured compassion in his voice. And when I say measured compassion, I don't mean the compassion is measured, but that despite all the suffering that he is going through, he still maintains his measured perspective and does not limit his compassion. He recognizes the need of the hour. Continue to support him and leaders like him. And I think his idea of students walking out in September and making their voice heard, it's a really critical component. The optimist in me hopes that this atrocity does not perpetuate through September. I hope it ends this very second. I also appreciate he is planning for the future based on the current circumstance and planning to be ready for the worst case scenario, prepare for the worst and hope for the best. Truly a remarkable person. May God keep him safe. I want to close by talking about Louisiana in these last 5 or 6 minutes that we have, because what's happening in Louisiana is truly remarkable. The governor was a hardcore right-wing MAGA nut job. What's his name? Governor Jeff Landry just signed into law a bill requiring all public schools, K through 12, including public colleges, to display the 10 Commandments in all the classrooms. Right? I mean, what? House Bill 71, approved by state lawmakers last month, mandates that a poster-sized display of the 10 Commandments with large, easily readable font be in every classroom at schools that receive state funding from kindergarten through the university level. The legislation specifies the exact language that must be printed on the classroom displays and outlines that the text of the 10 Commandments must be the central focus of the poster or framed document. Landry called it one of his favorite bills. He says, if you want to respect the rule of law, you got to start from the original law, which was Moses. He got his commandments from God, Landry said. I don't know where to begin with the absurdity of this. The ACLU, the Americans United for Separation of Church and State, and Freedom from Religion Foundation have said that this law violates long-standing Supreme Court precedent and the First Amendment and would result in unconstitutional religious coercion of students. They're right. I mean, look, as a Muslim, can I go start mandating that every child learn the Islamic call to prayer, the azan? No, I can't, because we live in a secular democracy where there's separation of religion and state. And I don't want to live in a theocracy. I don't want to have any government dictate religion to anybody. People should have the freedom to believe or not believe as they wish. And frankly, if your religion is so weak that you need a law punishing you for not following it, then it's not the religion you're protecting, it's your own ego. But what really gets me about this is not just the stupidity of trying to mandate religion, but Louisiana is a state that is second in child poverty nationwide, second only to Mississippi. Second in child poverty nationwide, yet when they had the opportunity to accept a federal program to ensure free school lunches for all children in public school, they said no. They said no. They said, we are going to instead shove 10 Commandments down their face. We're not going to allow them to actually eat food. I mean, the hypocrisy. To quote scripture, James 2, James the righteous literally scolds people for having faith without works. And the example he gives of children being hungry and naked. And he says, be you clothed and be you fed. What have you done? Nothing. And that's exactly what Louisiana has done. Told them, have faith, but not giving them any food. Louisiana, by the way, also has child marriage legalized. Yeah, in 2019, they voted to make child marriage at the age of 16 legal. So that's perfectly fine. Starving kids, perfectly fine. Oh, they also refused to raise the minimum wage from $7.25 an hour. Poverty wages, perfectly fine. They got rid of parole. So perpetual prison, perfectly fine. All the things that the Bible actually says they should do of freeing the prisoner and of protecting children and of feeding the hungry. None of that crap. No, that's garbage, according to Louisiana. What they want to do is force people to believe. It's absurd and it is offensive. And I hope that the ACLU sues them to kingdom come. And I hope that this stupid bill is repealed. And I hope that the leadership of Louisiana has some decency and senses, and they end up ensuring they can feed their children instead of starving them to death. God, I'm angry. Just the absurdity of these people just drives me nuts. All right, my friends, thank you for tuning in. That is all we have for today's show. I'm going to be reflecting on Pastor Munther Isaac's words for a while. Be sure to follow us on social media at Qasim Rashid across all platforms. If you're listening on Substack, be sure to upgrade to becoming a paid subscriber to continue to support this work. I will continue to advance this show that builds on compassion and justice and accountability for those in power. We've got a great lineup for next week as well. So be sure to tune in, same time, same place at 10 a.m. on Sunday on Sirius XM Urban View Channel 126, the most awesome show in the multiverse. My friends, be fierce, lead with compassion and justice. And July 4th is coming up. So I swear to God, be careful with those fireworks. Don't do anything stupid. I don't want to hear about any ER reports or ER journeys or anything. I mean, I think just I have to put this PSA out there. This is a weekend where the most numbers of fingers are blown off for obvious reasons. So please don't do anything stupid. Keep them away from your kids. Be safe and don't do anything dumb because it's not worth it. All right, that's my dad rant. I just needed to get that out of the way. All right, my friends, thank you for tuning in. Continue speaking truth to power. Until next week, peace.